Look, I'm tired of pretending. We're 3 years into the PS5 era, and half the games people call next gen are just PS4 games with a fresh coat of paint and a $70 price tag. You boot them up, wait through a loading screen that somehow still exists in 2024, and realize you're playing the same experience you had 5 years ago, just shinier. Everyone's complaining that modern games feel like expensive DLC, and honestly, they're not wrong. So I did something completely unhinged. I bought every major PS5 game that promised to take full advantage of the hardware and actually tested which ones delivered that next-gen feeling. Not just better graphics, but experiences that genuinely couldn't exist on the PS4. I'm talking instant world hopping, haptic feedback that changes how you play, load times so fast you forget loading screens were ever a thing, and gameplay that makes you go, okay, this is what I bought this console for. This video is my brutally honest breakdown of 20 games that actually feel next-gen. Not because they have ray tracing, because they use the PS5 to create moments you couldn't get anywhere else. Let's get into it.
Immortals of Aveum is a first-person magic shooter that nobody played, and that's a shame, because it's one of the most technically impressive games on PS5. The spell effects are absurd. Screen-filling explosions, particle-heavy combats, environmental destruction, and the console handles it without stuttering. The DualSense makes every spell type feel different. Red magic is aggressive and punchy, blue magic is precise and controlled, green magic is rapid-fire chaos. The haptics and adaptive triggers make switching between them feel distinct and satisfying. The story is generic fantasy, chosen one narrative, magical war, ancient prophecy, but the combat is where this game shines. The fight in the Pale Kingdom, where you're battling through collapsing ruins while reality fractures around you, is visually stunning. The problem is the game is long, maybe too long, and the pacing drags in the middle. But if you want a game that actually pushes the PS5's GPU and makes you feel like a magical god of destruction, Immortals delivers that fantasy. It's rough around the edges and clearly didn't have the marketing budget it deserved, but it's worth checking out if you want something different. Just maybe wait for a deep sale.
Death Stranding Director's Cut is Kojima doing Kojima things, but the PS5 version adds enough new content and technical polish to make it feel like the definitive edition. The DualSense work is phenomenal. You feel every step across rocky terrain, every raindrop, every piece of cargo shifting on your back. The adaptive triggers give feedback when you balance, and the haptics make traversal, yes, walking, feel strangely immersive. The load times are almost non-existent, so jumping between regions is seamless. The new content, including racing missions and the firing range, adds variety to the core delivery loop. But the real upgrade is visual. 60 FPS makes the entire experience feel smoother, and the already gorgeous landscapes look even better with improved lighting. The BT encounters, where you're sneaking through timefall rain while ghosts hunt you, are still some of the tensest moments in gaming, and the late-game cliff battles, where you're fighting through war-torn memories, benefit massively from improved performance. Death Stranding isn't for everyone. It's slow, it's weird, it's extremely Kojima. But on PS5, it's the best version of a game that's genuinely unlike anything else. If you bounced off it before, this version might change your mind. Helldivers 2 is proof that you don't need a massive budget to make a game feel next-gen. You just need great design and tech that works. This is a third-person co-op shooter where you're dropping onto hostile planets, fighting bugs and robots, calling in airstrikes, and trying not to blow up your teammates. The PS5's SSD means lobbies load fast, missions start instantly, and there's no downtime between chaos. The DualSense makes every weapon feel distinct, every explosion rattles the controller, and the adaptive triggers give weight to heavy weapons. The best moments are the emergent ones. You call in an orbital strike, your teammate doesn't move in time, and suddenly you're scrambling to revive them while a horde closes in. The tension is constant, the difficulty is brutal, and the humor is just dark enough to keep things fun. The bug planet missions where you're fighting massive alien swarms in acid rain are pure adrenaline. It's a live service game, which means it'll evolve over time, but the core gameplay loop is so satisfying that I keep coming back, and at its price point, it's one of the best values on PS5. If you have friends to play with, this is essential. Gran Turismo 7 on PS5 is the most next-gen a racing game has ever felt, and it's not even close. The DualSense integration is so detailed that you can feel the difference between asphalt, gravel, and wet track surfaces through the controller. The adaptive triggers simulate brake resistance and throttle control, you feel the ABS kicking in, you feel the tires losing grip, and it fundamentally changes how you drive. This isn't a gimmick, this is game-changing feedback that makes you a better racer. The ray tracing and replays is jaw-dropping, reflections on car paint look photorealistic, and the lighting is so accurate it's borderline absurd. The load times are instant, so you're never waiting between races or menu screens. You're just racing, tuning, racing again. The 24 hours of Le Mans endurance race where weather shifts dynamically and the track conditions change in real time is where you realize this game is operating on a completely different level. It's a love letter to car culture, and if you're into racing games at all, GT7 on PS5 is the definitive experience. The DualSense alone makes it worth it.
Callisto Protocol is a beautiful mess, but the next-gen feeling is undeniable. Visually, this game is stunning. The facial animations, the lighting in Black Iron Prison, the grotesque detail on every monster, it's all cutting edge. The DualSense work is aggressive. Every hit you take sends shockwaves through the controller. Dodging feels snappy with adapted trigger resistance, and the horror atmosphere benefits from haptic tension that keeps you on edge. The combat is brutal and visceral in a way that feels very next-gen. You're not just shooting, you're stomping, dodging, using gravity weapons to impale enemies on spikes, and every kill feels weighty and satisfying. The two-head boss fight, where you're fighting a mutated monstrosity in a cargo bay, is chaotic and intense. The problem is, the game doesn't have enough variety. By the halfway point, you've seen most of what it has to offer. It's short, it's linear, and the story doesn't quite stick the landing. But if you want a visually impressive, technically solid horror game that actually uses PS5 hardware, Callisto Protocol delivers that. Just maybe wait for a sale. Dead Space Remake takes one of the scariest games ever made and rebuilds it with tech that makes every moment even more terrifying. The lighting is dynamic, the shadows are oppressive, and the Ishimura feels like a living, breathing nightmare. The PS5's 3D audio makes every sound, every vent rattle, every distant scream, every necromorph skittering in the dark feel like it's coming from a specific direction. You're constantly looking over your shoulder because you can hear things hunting you. The DualSense takes the immersion to another level. Isaac's heartbeat pulses through the controller when oxygen is low. Stomping on necromorphs gives you this visceral, crunchy feedback that makes dismemberment feel disturbingly satisfying. The plasma cutter heats up as you fire. The zero-G sections, where you're floating through the vacuum of space with nothing but your suit and the sound of your own breathing, are absolutely chilling. And the pacing is perfect. The asteroid defense sequence, the return to the medical bay, the final confrontation with the hive mind, it's all elevated by tech that makes horror feel more real. Dead Space Remake is what every remake should aspire to be. Respectful, but willing to improve everything the original couldn't quite achieve. Liza P is what happens when you take the Bloodborne formula, set it in a nightmarish, puppet-infested city, and optimize it for the PS5. The load times are fast, the combat is smooth, and the gothic steampunk aesthetic is so detailed and oppressive that every street feels like walking through a twisted fairy tale. The DualSense makes every weapon feel distinct. Saw blades grind with vibration, rapiers feel light and precise, and heavy hammers hit with satisfying weight. The boss fights are brutal and brilliant. The fight against the Parade Master, this grotesque marionette that moves in unsettling, jerky animations, sets the tone immediately. Then there's the Puppet King in Krat City Hall, where you're dodging attacks in a collapsing throne room, and every near miss makes the controller pulse with tension. The game forces you to learn, adapt, and master its systems. And when you finally take down a boss that's been destroying you, it feels earned. The story is surprisingly emotional too. Pinocchio retellings don't usually hit this hard, but the life system and your choices toward humanity make the narrative land in unexpected ways. Life of P might not reinvent soulslikes, but it's one of the best on PS5, and it absolutely feels next-gen in execution. Forspoken gets a lot of hate, and some of it is fair. The dialogue can be rough, the story takes a while to find its footing,
But here's the thing nobody talks about. The traversal and combat in this game feel next-gen in a way that most other games don't even attempt. The parkour magic system where you're flow jumping across mountains, waterfalling up cliffs, and zipping across entire regions in seconds is legitimately incredible. The PS5's SSD keeps the world streaming seamlessly, even when you're moving at absurd speeds, and the sense of freedom is unmatched. The DualSense work is solid. Every spell has its own haptic feedback, and the adaptive triggers give different resistances for different magic types. The combat itself, once you unlock more spells, becomes this fast-paced dance where you're chaining elemental attacks, dodging in slow motion, and controlling the battlefield. The fight against Tantasila, where you're dueling across a crumbling palace while reality warps around you, is where the game finally clicks. It's not perfect. The writing can be cringe and the open world feels a bit empty, but if you want to experience traversal that actually uses the PS5's hardware to its fullest, Forspoken delivers. It's worth grabbing on sale at least. Ghost of Tsushima already felt like a masterpiece on PS4, but the PS5 version takes it to another level entirely. The director's cut runs at 60 FPS in both performance and resolution modes, and the difference is night and day. Every sword swing, every gust of wind, every blade of grass moves with this fluidity that makes combat feel like a samurai film come to life. The DualSense adds subtle tension to your bow, feedback to every parry, and the haptic wind guiding you toward objectives is such a smart, immersive touch. The Iki Island expansion, which is exclusive to this version, is phenomenal. It's darker, more personal, and the new enemy types push you to master the combat in ways the base game didn't. The duel against the eagle, where you're fighting in a thunderstorm with rain hammering the controller, is one of the most cinematic boss fights I've ever played. And the load times? You die, you're back in 3 seconds. You fast travel? Instant. The flow never breaks. Tsushima on PS5 isn't just a visual upgrade, it's the definitive way to play one of the best open world games of the generation. If you skipped it on PS4 or want an excuse to return, this version makes it feel next-gen in every way that matters. Baldur's Gate 3 on PS5 is proof that you can port a massive system-heavy RPG to console and not lose any of the magic. Larian optimized this thing beautifully. Loading times are fast, the frame rate holds steady even in chaotic combat, and the controls actually work with the DualSense. The haptic feedback when you roll dice, cast spells, or land critical hits adds this tactile satisfaction that makes every decision feel important. The scope here is unreal. Every choice matters, every conversation branches, every character has depth you won't fully explore in one playthrough. The fight against the Orathon in the House of Hope, the reveal at Moonrise Towers, the final confrontation with the Absolute, it's all epic, emotional, and player-driven. The PS5 handles it all without choking, even when the screen is filled with particle effects and environmental chaos. And the fact that this entire experience, 100+ hours of branching narrative, tactical combat, and meaningful roleplay runs smoothly on console is genuinely impressive. Baldur's Gate 3 on PS5 isn't the compromise, it's the full experience optimized for hardware that can finally handle it. If you like RPGs, this is essential. Alan Wake 2 is the most visually stunning game I've ever played, and I'm not exaggerating. Remedy built this game specifically for current-gen hardware, and it shows in every frame. The lighting, the reflections, the way shadows move, it's borderline photorealistic, and it runs smoothly even with all that tech under the hood. The PS5 version makes you feel like you're playing through a prestige horror film, and the atmosphere is so oppressive that even walking through a forest feels dangerous. The dual narrative structure, where you swap between FBI agent Saga Anderson and Alan trapped in the dark place, is seamless thanks to instant loading. You switch perspectives and the tone shifts completely. Saga's investigation feels grounded and procedural, while Alan's sections are surreal nightmares that twist reality. The DualSense enhances the dread. You feel Alan's typewriter keys clicking. You feel Saga's flashlight beam pulsing as it weakens. The overlap sections, where reality and the dark place collide, are some of the most creative and unsettling moments in modern horror. It's slower paced, more cerebral than most action games, but if you want a mature, narrative-driven horror experience that looks and feels next-gen, Alan Wake 2 delivers.
This game couldn't exist on last-gen hardware, and that's exactly why it matters. RE4 Remake takes one of the greatest games ever made and reimagines it for the PS5 in a way that feels both faithful and completely new. The atmosphere is heavier, the tension is thicker, and the next-gen tech makes every encounter feel like life or death. The loading is instant. You die, you're back in the fight within seconds. No downtime, just pure survival horror momentum that keeps you on edge. The DualSense does so much heavy lifting here. You feel Leon's heartbeat through the controller when enemies get close. Reloading the shotgun has this satisfying mechanical click. Chainsaws revving up send vibrations through your hands that genuinely make you panic. The village fight early on, where you're holding off waves of ganados in that tiny house, is already stressful, but when you feel every shotgun blast and every door break through the controller, it becomes unforgettable. And the boss fights? El Gigante slamming the ground, the lake monster erupting from the water, Krauser's knife fight in the rain? It's all elevated by tech that makes everything feel more visceral. RE4 Remake proves that you can honor the original while making something that feels completely next-gen. This is how you do a remake.
Final Fantasy XVI throws away turn-based combat and goes full Devil May Cry with kaiju-sized boss fights, and the PS5 is the only reason it works. The econ battles, where you're controlling literal gods fighting across continents, are so massive and so fast that they would have melted a PS4. You're dodging building-sized attacks, countering with your own city-destroying powers, and the frame rate never dips. It's spectacle on a scale that feels genuinely impossible. The DualSense makes every ability feel weighty. When Clive uses Phoenix abilities, a controller heats up. When you're using Garuda's wind powers, you feel the air rush through the haptics. And the combat itself is just satisfying. Dodging at the last second triggers a slow-mo counter, and landing a perfect limit break feels like pure power. The Titan versus Bahamut fight, where you're literally throwing mountains at a dragon, is one of the most absurd and incredible moments in gaming this year. The story gets dark. Really dark, but it's epic in the way only Final Fantasy can be. If you've ever wanted to feel like you're playing through a high fantasy action movie with stakes that matter, this is your game. It's not perfect, but it's absolutely worth full price.
Forbidden West is one of those games where the PS5 version isn't just better, it's a completely different experience. The world is massive, and thanks to the SSD, fast travel is almost instant. You're in a jungle, you open the map, you pick a desert, and boom, you're there in under 5 seconds. No loading bar, no patience required. It makes exploration feel effortless, and when the world looks this good, you actually want to explore every corner. The DualSense work here is subtle but brilliant. Every weapon has its own feel. Bows have tension on the triggers, tripwires click into place, and when you're riding a machine, you feel every gallop through the controller. The Sunwing flight sections, where you're soaring over valleys and mountains with wind effects coming through the haptics, are genuinely breathtaking. And visually, this game is ridiculous. The performance mode runs at 60 FPS and still looks better than most games' fidelity modes. The story hits harder this time around too. The confrontation with Regala, the underwater sections in Las Vegas ruins, the final battle against Spectre Prime, it's all elevated by tech that lets the game move at the speed of your decisions. Forbidden West proves that open world games don't need to feel sluggish anymore. This is next-gen exploration done right.
Astro's Playroom comes pre-installed on every PS5, and honestly, it's criminal that most people skip it. This isn't just a tech demo, it's a love letter to PlayStation history wrapped in the single best showcase of what the DualSense can actually do. Every level is designed around a different haptic experience. You feel the texture of metal, sand, ice, and glass on their Astro's feet. You blow into the controller to spin fans. You feel raindrops individually. It sounds gimmicky until you play it, and then it clicks. This is what next gen feels like. The GPU jungle level, where you're climbing through cooling fans and feeling the controller heat up, chef's kiss. The memory metal section, where you're walking on different surfaces and the feedback changes with every step, it's absurdly detailed. And the final boss fight is this nostalgic explosion of PlayStation references that somehow also serves as the ultimate test of every DualSense feature at once.
It's short, maybe 2 hours, but it's free, and it does more with a controller than most $70 games even attempt. If you haven't played Astro's Playroom, you're literally ignoring the best argument for why you bought a PS5 in the first place. Returnal is what happens when you give a bullet hell roguelike the budget of a AAA blockbuster and let it go completely wild. This game is punishing, beautiful, and so next-gen, it almost feels like it's from a different console generation entirely. The entire experience is built on the PS5 speed. There are no loading screens between biomes, no pauses between deaths, just this endless loop of dying, learning, and diving back in. The DualSense integration here is legitimately game-changing. The adaptive triggers let you hold L2 halfway for your standard shot or push all the way through for your alt fire, and it becomes muscle memory within an hour. You're dodging neon projectiles, feeling every raindrop hit your suit through the haptics, hearing enemy audio spatially placed through the controller speaker, and it all combines into this sensory overload that keeps you locked in. The Crimson Wastes fight against Ixion, a lightning-fast boss in a sandstorm, is where you realize this game doesn't mess around. It's hard, it's stressful, it will destroy you repeatedly, but when you finally break through and clear a biome in one perfect run, it feels like you just conquered something genuinely next-gen. Returnal isn't for everyone, but if you want a game that pushes the PS5 harder than anything else, this is it. Spider-Man 2 takes everything the first two games did and cranks it up until it feels like controlled chaos in the best possible way. You're not just web-slinging anymore. You're launching off buildings with the web wings, gliding across Manhattan like you're base jumping between skyscrapers, and the speed is unreal. The PS5's SSD means the entire map loads seamlessly with zero popping, even when you're moving at Mach 3. It's the kind of traversal that makes you ignore fast travel because getting there is half the fun. The Venom sections are where this game shows its teeth. You're not playing as a hero anymore, you're playing as a monster, and the haptics make you feel every symbiote tendril ripping through enemies. The controller pulses with this gross organic feedback that's uncomfortable in the best way. Then there's the Peter versus Miles fight in the third act, where you're swapping between characters mid-battle and the game never stutters, never loads, never breaks immersion. It's seamless storytelling powered by tech that just works. And the set pieces? A collapsing amusement park, a symbiote-infested city, a boss fight on a crumbling bridge. Every mission feels like a summer blockbuster, and the PS5 handles it without breaking a sweat. This is superhero gaming at its peak. Demon's Souls is what happens when you take a PS3 cult classic and rebuild it from the ground up for hardware that can finally do it justice. Bluepoint didn't just remaster this game, they reimagined it. Bulletaria looks like a painting you can walk through, and the lighting is so moody and atmospheric that even dying feels cinematic. The DualSense adds this layer of immersion where you feel every sword clang, every shield block, every arrow release with terrifying precision. But here's where the next-gen feeling really hits. The load times are gone. You die, and you will die, and you're back in the action in under 3 seconds. No punishment, no waiting, just pure, okay, let's try that again energy. It turns one of the most brutal games ever made into something almost addictive because the flow never breaks. The Tower Knight fight, where this massive armored giant is stomping toward you and you feel every footstep through the controller, that's the moment you realize this isn't just a remake, it's a showcase. It's hard as hell, sure, but it's also one of the most rewarding experiences on PS5. If you want to feel like you're playing something that could only exist on this console, start here. This is the game that Sony should have just bundled with every PS5 because it's the perfect answer to, what can this thing actually do? Rift Apart doesn't just use the console's SSD, it builds its entire identity around it. You're mid-combat, you throw a rift, and you're instantly in another dimension. No loading screen, no stutter. You just leap from a neon city to a pirate dimension, to a crystalline hellscape, and the game never blinks. The best moment? When you're chasing Dr. Nefarious through collapsing realities, and the world is literally tearing apart around you, pulling you between planets in real time. You're not watching a cutscene, you're playing through dimensional chaos, and it feels like the game is showing off in the best way possible. Then, there's the DualSense work.
every weapon has its own haptic signature. The burst pistol feels like popcorn in your hands. The Negatron Collider hums with this low, dangerous vibration. It's not a gimmick, it makes you want to try every weapon just to feel what it does. And yeah, it's gorgeous. Pixar quality visuals running at smooth 60 FPS with zero compromises. This is the game that justifies the console's existence. Worth every dollar.
Look, this list is personal. I'm sure I missed someone's favorite game, and I'm sure someone's gonna roast me in the comments for including Forspoken or Callisto Protocol. That's fine. Gaming is subjective, and what feels next-gen to me might not land the same way for you. The point is, these are the games that made me feel like I wasn't just playing a prettier PS4 game. These are the ones that justified the upgrade. So here's the deal. Drop a comment and tell me which PS5 game made you go, okay, this is next-gen. Did I sleep on something? Did I overrate something? Let me know. And if you're still on the fence about any of these, hopefully this video saved you from dropping $70 on something that wasn't worth it. Also, if your partner is mad at you for buying another game after watching this, I'm sorry. But also, you're welcome. If this video helped you figure out what's actually worth playing, hit that like button and subscribe. I'll keep making these as long as you keep watching. Now go play something that actually uses the console you spent $500 on.